This is Rich Lieberman. We are live on the Bay Area Media Pulse. It's a Friday in the afternoon and evening. We thank you for watching. If you're watching live on YouTube, we welcome you aboard. If you are watching at a later date, as we always say, we also welcome you aboard. Look, I have largely avoided the Laura Owens legal drama. Now, Laura Owens, of course, is the daughter of Ron Owens, the ex KGO radio talk show host, very legacy station, and Ron, of course, being the one of the great ones here in the Bay Area, not just as a talk show host, but as a radio performer, personality, journalist, etc. A member of the Radio Hall of Fame, a Marconi winner, and I've discussed various entities within this whole thing and my own relationship with Ron Owens growing up in the Bay Area and him being a very vital part of my upbringing and a force to which I always wanted to sort of echo his own legacy. And I have avoided most of the time, only referenced until now, the legal drama involving Ron Owens' daughter, Laura, and she is involved in a case involving false accusations and perjury charges and just a real nasty situation that is currently being litigated. It will be a formal trial unless there's some sort of settlement. I'm not going to go into that because it's kind of known already. If you don't know about it, you can just search information on the computer and I'm sure you'll get everything. That's not really the point here. I received some pictures of Ron and his daughter headed into court last week in Arizona, and it's very sad. It's not a very pretty picture, and I'm going to publish it only because I think it's significant how this whole thing has taken its toll. And not just Ron, obviously, I would imagine Laura Owens, but also his wife, Jan Black. And it's very disturbing. I've heard quite a bit. I've heard quite a bit about this whole case. And once again, the main reason why I've avoided talking about the case is I don't know the particular ins and outs because I haven't followed it. I didn't even know about it, frankly, up until the beginning of the year and how it coincided with a part of time of my professional life that when I talked about Ron without even knowing the weeds of this story involving his daughter, Laura, it kind of came about in sort of coincidence manner. And I've spoken about it left and right here, those of you who have seen me, and I've spoken about it, and then the coinciding articles that were published at the beginning of the year in the Chronicle and the Mercury News with Ron and Jan Black detailing their particular personal situation, which was becoming so toxic and so, in their minds, a quagmire, without mentioning the Laura Owens situation. But Ron had spoken of challenges that had confronted him and how he needed help. And they had a GoFundMe page set up, which has raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $125,000. And I subsequently had stated after a while, where was the money going? And I wasn't making any kind of accusation. I was just trying to echo what a lot of people were talking about. And I became somewhat indirectly involved, and which I explained also. And I wanted to clear the air. And I've spoken to Ron about 6 weeks ago when I spoke to Jan Black, and we've had periodic discussions and talks. I even invited him on my show. And I've been on a couple of shows and spoke about my relationship with Ron and how I believed that this was beginning to take its toll, and not make any kind of direct inferences whatsoever. I was sort of stymied and, like many of you, wondering about the money and explaining what Ron had told me and both Jan had told me in their own cynical beliefs about the accuser in this legal drama currently in the midst of negotiation in Arizona, and which I've detailed. Um, I am publishing this picture because A, it's public already, but it presents Ron in kind of a situation where he's in a wheelchair and doesn't look very good. And just from my own observations and the people that I speak to who are close to him, and I haven't spoken to him in about 6 weeks, neither him nor Jan Black, his wife. Uh, But the reason why I'm talking about it now is because I think it's something that should be noted and talked about. It's not getting at all any kind of coverage in the mainstream press here in the Bay Area. And I find that to be rather bizarre. And of course, it's kind of a tabloid type of case because it involves the guy that used to be on The Bachelor. But nevertheless, it involves Laura Owens, who indeed is the daughter of Ron Owens, a very celebrated figure in the Bay Area with regards to KGO and the public, et cetera, et cetera. And by not talking about it, which I said that I wasn't really going to get into the specifics of the actual case itself, nevertheless presents a huge kind of a, how can I put this? Dilemma, kind of personal quagmire. I know it's painstaking. It's very sad. But I think you have to cover it in some way. There are people who are covering it. I've been on a couple of shows. They asked about my relationship with Ron, and I detailed it and said what I said. There was nothing scurrilous or onerous indicated or anything that wise. I'm talking about Ron now in a different light. It's taken its toll, this whole case. And I'm not in it, obviously. I know about it. I've heard things. And I decided to talk about it because it certainly has the interest and the news coverage, which it is deserved in the Phoenix area in Arizona, et cetera, et cetera. Bay Area, nothing's going on. And I'm not going to comment on that. You know how I feel already, the fact that it's not being covered, and that we have these two main articles, one in the Chronicle, no, now two, and one in the Mercury News with absolutely no follow-up, no detailed talk about the case, which certainly is on the forefront in Ron's life and Jan Black's life, certainly, obviously, Laura Owens' life. It's worth covering, and we haven't had that. And I'll leave you guys to decide whether you think there's something odd with that there's something bizarre that it's not being covered here in the Bay Area. Because if you took the circumstances and placed all of this in other cities, LA or New York or Chicago, Boston, pick your city, I would be astonished had this case not been getting the kind of attention that it deserves. Frankly, it's news. It doesn't always have to be great news, or could be really ugly news. It could be what have you, whatever you want to describe it as, but it's news. And no coverage has been presented. And if you look at the picture of Ron, he being in a wheelchair and all that, the last time I spoke to him, he had indicated to me that several of his medical issues have worked out. He's approaching his 80th birthday come October, and I felt actually very, very enlightened about that. He sounded, which I talked about a couple of months ago, he sounded great, sounded very lucid. Um, and in fact, he spoke eloquently, as did Jan, his wife, and all that. But um, right now, I don't know. I made another attempt. I called Ron directly, and of course, he's not talking, or he didn't return a call. Same thing with Jan Black. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because obviously their lawyers have said um, that they can't speak about this, and which wasn't the reason why I called him. I wanted to see what was going on, and I subsequently got these photos, one of which I'll publish, and it's just so, again, it's really really sad. So, and the whole fact of the matter is, many of you did not know, and I want to answer this question. I got a lot of questions like, why did Ron move to Scottsdale, Arizona? And I myself wondered that aloud. And this was, God, he's been there now for a couple of years, longer than that. And I was told, and they both indicated, that the warmer weather, the warmer climate would be a lot more suitable for his Parkinson's disease diagnosis, and frankly, his aging. He'd indicated, as many of you know, several bouts with cancer, to which he told me a few months back that he seemed to have been able to, for the time being, beat the cancer diagnosis. And we all know that's an ongoing crisis and all that. You never really beat it until what, 5 years after an initial diagnosis. So I wish him well. Many of you, and I'm acquiescing to this, have asked me again, what's the deal with Ron? What's the deal with Ron? What's the deal with Laura? So again, you want to go on the internet and look at the Laura Owens situation. It's kind of intensifying legality wise, and with the regards to Ron, without him saying so, I think it's taken a toll, and it's very sad because he is the parent, he is the father, and his daughter is in what appears to be a very serious legal situation. And anyway, I thought I would talk about it and answer your question, and therefore keep myself somewhat um, not glued to this whole thing, but I certainly have become a lot more focused on what's happening and all that. And I've done these two shows, and they asked me about Ron, and I gave them all my answers. And I think, I know there's a lot of people out there who have asked me what's the motive of these other folks who are aligned with this Clayton bachelor guy and all that. And I think a lot of them, they might have their own agenda, but there are a few, these various legal people who have done shows and kind of come to the conclusion of whatever they've come to, and have been quite vocal and quite critical and accusatory themselves of one Laura Owens. But I'm not going to get into that. I didn't get into that on the show, other than to explain my situation and to feel sorry for the parties involved, most notably not just Laura Owens, but especially Ron and his wife, the parents, Ron and his wife Jan, the parents of one Laura Owens. So hope you're having a great Friday. Hope you have a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching, and do become a subscriber and like me and all that. And we will see you once again. Talk to you later.